Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Red. Damn it. You know what? We're going to roll with it. Welcome to Bread Radio. I'm your host, August Acker, aka Bread. Bread Radio is a podcast with video games. This is episode 14. The date is Saturday, November 7th, 2020. Listen wherever you do to podcast, whether that be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, I don't know, the RSS feeds. I think it should be everywhere out there thanks to my distribution. And if it's not somewhere that you listen to, let me know and I'll make sure it is. Merch, of course, is available on breadradio.live. We've also recently launched a Patreon, patreon.com/breadradio if you'd like to support. Again, that decision was made because we're not really streaming on Twitch as much lately. It's just easier to make content that lives like on YouTube and work on stuff rather than a live show. If we get enough support someday, maybe I'll go back to streaming. It just suits me better. I can play games and think about them critically, like without streaming. So that's kind of what I've opted for. If you've got mail for the show, you can go ahead and send that to breadradiolive@gmail.com. Questions, comments. What's your favorite type of bread? What's your favorite kind of pizza? I don't know, anything. Anything's fair game. But thanks for joining me here, wherever you are listening. Wanted to start today's show off with a shout out for one of my buddies. Check out my friend Logan Gabriel. He's on YouTube under the same moniker, Logan Gabriel. He did the intro music for this podcast, so if you like that. He also did the music for a clicker game called Space Plan. And more recently did one for the Apple Store called it's a Game of Thrones game called Tale of Crows. He's doing a lot of music production, contract work, looking to work in games. So if for some reason you're listening to this and have a need for some audio work, highly recommend my friend Logan Gabriel. Less than a week away from both console launches. How about that? The 7th today, so that means the Xbox Series X and S come out on the 10th, and the PS5, both disc and digital version, at least in the States, comes out 2 days later. I think it's a few days after, like worldwide. So a lot of excitement being generated, a lot of reviews going out there, a little bit of news here and there. But before we get to the news, let's talk about the last week. If you're in America or if you're anywhere in the world and you're listening to this, you probably have been plugged into the election here in the States. It's seemingly over. And again, I'll say seemingly. And I think a lot of the nation can breathe a sigh of relief. And I'll kind of just leave it at that because I'd like to just talk about games today. Because, I don't know, this is our escape, right? So let's talk about some video games. It wasn't a really bad week of work. My boss was out most of the week, got some work done. Again, the normal distractions from the election, but I'm feeling pretty good mentally, I guess, got some new supporters on Patreon. So shout out to you guys for the support. Really do appreciate it. It's what keeps me going. Last night, rewatched Baby Driver. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie before. It's a great movie, man. It's basically like a 2-hour long music video. And I don't know, it was nice to just like sit and chill, and I don't know, there's not a lot to do other than sit and chill these days, considering the I don't know, this entire podcast has existed within a pandemic. So I expected when I first launched this to have a lot more updates for everyone, like what's going on with me, like what are we doing, what's exciting. But I really don't, because, and that's both a positive and a negative, because I've had a ton of game time lately, which is great. But the cabin fever is setting in. We're not even in the heart of winter yet. It's been pretty warm here in Columbus. Actually, like warm enough that you could go outside without a jacket, and that's kind of unheard of in November. And it twists the knife just a little more because, it's football season, the Buckeyes are playing, and normally we'd be having get-togethers. And while it's good for my productivity, it's not so great for my social life, where we're currently at. So I'm hoping that within the next year we can return to the status quo, or at least whatever the status quo will be. Games. What did I play last week? Well, we've been pretty steady with the game night that we've been playing on Thursdays. Ton of Halo custom matches. Thanks again if you guys came and played and jumped in the Discord. Again, I mentioned it last week, but it's just been such a like relief to like play games with pals. Both a relief and stressful because I'm so competitive that like it's stressful playing against your friends, because when you play against your friends, like you're naturally going to shit talk, and I'm so used to playing online against other people where it's just, you know, banter, but when you're playing against your friends, it just cuts that much deeper. So I know I end each show like be cool to one another, but man, I was getting riled up. It was a good time. So a ton of Halo. We played some Valorant too. I think Valorant's going to be in my locker of games for, you know, indefinitely for now. It's just something about the gunplay for me, like the competitive nature of the game, the strategy, it just like hits right. So that's going to be in my stable of games. And then lastly, some Mario Kart 8. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at that game. I don't know. I've never like entered a tournament or anything. I'd like to think I'm pretty good. I'm sure I'd get the floor wiped with me. It's like my buddies and I were talking about Double Dash, and that was a game I was okay at, and my buddies are actually really good at it. And it reminds me of the days when like there really wasn't online gaming space. So like there wasn't online gaming like infrastructure. So like you'd think you're really good, or you actually were really good, and like you'd really test your ability when you play someone that's not in your ecosystem for the first time. So it's been really fun playing that as well. I started a game called Genshin Impact on my phone. I just seen a lot of buzz around it, and like people were comparing it to Breath of the Wild. I originally was looking for something to play on my Switch. I don't think it's out on the Switch yet. But as soon as you launch it up, it's like anime Breath of the Wild. And I didn't realize it was on PS4, and eventually it'll be on PS5 with backwards compatibility. And I really think I want to take a jump into that game. It's free to play. It's immediately when you start playing, the graphic style, the like colors, the openness of the world, like the layout of the world, it right away invokes Breath of the Wild. You can dash, like there's a stamina bar, you can climb on anything. I haven't gotten far enough to like work with any of the gliding mechanics, but it's got a glide mechanic just like Breath of the Wild. And I've really been looking for, I mean, I know that's a heavy ask. Give me a game like Breath of the Wild, one of the best games of the last generation and maybe of all time. But it seems like it's going to scratch that itch for me. So I'm actually thinking about downloading on my PS4 and giving it a shot until the PS5 comes out. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have more discussion there. And then, of course, on my Switch, I'm playing Hades. And I've touched on this like the last couple of weeks. It's a rogue game, roguelite. I don't know. I always hear roguelike and roguelite games, but I don't think I've actually ever played a true rogue game. I don't know. Genres are all over the place these days, right? But it's made by Supergiant of Bastion and Pyre and Transistor fame. Of course, the voice acting in the game is absolutely top notch, and it's part of what drives you forward in the game. Not only just like the natural progression of the rogue gameplay, but like actually moving the story forward. Really motivates you to keep coming back or do that next run or fire it up. And if you're into that type of gameplay at all, again, really highly recommend it. I know it's out on Switch. That's where I definitely most enjoy playing it. It's like perfect to play while you're watching a TV show or something. If you're a crazy person like me that has to multitask all the time. But it's also on Steam, I believe, and on PC. I'm not sure about consoles yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it was on PS4 and Xbox. But if not, it's probably only a matter of time because it just exited early access a few weeks ago. I don't know. There's more games than ever out there, obviously, when you look at the landscape and the new consoles coming out. And I'm trying to touch on everything as much as humanly possible. But like I said, I found myself kind of falling back on some old stalwarts like Halo and Mario Kart and Valorant. So getting some new games into the ecosystem, playing a console again, like I've had a hard time just like I have a PS4 again, but like sitting down and playing it, like I'd love to sit down and play like more Hitman before the third one comes out. I'd sit down and beat Ghost of Tsushima. I'm thinking I'll wait until the PS5 comes and I can play it upscaled on the PS5. Don't know why I'm doing that because the TV I own isn't that great yet, but I don't know. Maybe I'm looking for excuses to put that money to work, that hardware to work. I don't know. Let's get right into news, I guess. Right. Hot off the presses, Mass Effect Legendary Edition was announced today. That's coming out in spring 2021, and there's also murmurings of there's murmurings that a veteran team in the BioWare landscape is working on a new Mass Effect. Obviously, Andromeda didn't land the way EA had hoped. I didn't actually play it. It looked like it had some of the touchstones of a Mass Effect game, but largely it was a disappointment to the hardest of hardcore fans. When Mass Effect Legendary Edition comes out, it's going to be... I know I was just talking shit about remakes and remasters, but it's going to be hard for me to turn that down. I just... That story is... The Shepard story up until the end. I know there's controversy about the end. I can't even remember what they changed it to at this point, but it's one of those first games where you really felt like you had the agency to affect the world around you and see that progression over game. And I don't know, maybe I'll go through with a Renegade play this time around. If I'm speaking honestly with myself, of course I won't. I always find it really hard to actually be like an evil son of a bitch in a video game if there's the option to be good. I don't know what that is. There's probably some sort of study on why that is. But that's some good news out there for the Mass Effect crew. And if I suspect they're coming out on the next gen consoles, I can only imagine how good it's going to look based on the trailer. It seems like it's going to be a full remake. So really, really interested to see how they handle that. I wonder, especially with Mass Effect 1, which notoriously the gunplay in Mass Effect 1 is not great, but the RPG elements are pretty solid. I wonder if they update the controls to be more consistent throughout the trilogy. So also today, Demon's Souls State of Play was released by PS5 or by Sony. I watched some of it. And I say I watched some of it because I just have, you guys know me, if you're listening to this, like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Demon's Souls, Sekiro, something about that gameplay just eludes me. I know it's supposed to feel awesome. The game looks awesome. I don't know, if I see it on sale someday, maybe I pick it up and try and bash my head against the wall. That's how I describe my experience playing those types of games. But I think mostly I'll enjoy seeing a bunch of people jumping back in or into Demon's Souls for the first time if they're newer fans, because the game itself, like one of my criticisms of the older games is they're just not like fun for me to look at or play. I had the same issue with 7 Days to Die for a while. I think we mentioned that on the last cast, but the graphical updates on this, like, I don't know, for some reason Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, everything about those games like screamed, like the graphics just seemed really dated for me, and I know that's like super shallow, but I don't know, if it feels right, it feels right, and it just never felt right to me when I was playing it. So but the State of Play, it looks very promising, and I'm sure people are gonna have a great time. I'm not gonna outwardly just dunk on it without any cause, because if I had to imagine, it's going to play pretty well as well on the PS5. So looking forward to that and watching streams. More news. Some reviews have started rolling out for both consoles. I watched IGN's reviews today, and funnily enough, for PS5, Xbox Series X, and the Xbox Series S, it was 8s across the board. So I know IGN isn't the end-all be-all of gaming news and gaming reviews. Like, you should source that knowledge from and form your own opinion before you make a purchase. But it's looking like we're headed towards a very strong launch for both of these consoles. The thing I did want to talk about, the last two podcasts, of course, we covered some of the specs of the systems, and included that in that was storage capacity. And this week, I think it's a little bit misleading when these companies come out and say how big their hard drives are going to be, or their SSDs in this case. Because there's always going to be, just like when you build a PC, there's always going to be space taken by the operating system. There's always going to be space taken up by the UI and other assets. So those figures aren't as true as maybe you would hope they'd be. So the first set of news that I saw coming out was the Xbox Series S, and that's the second SKU for the Xbox, if you're not clear on that already. But the storage capacity is 364 gigs. I'll say that one more time. 364 gigs, which is wild to think about. I remember having like 200 gigs, or the launch PS3s, like we had a 60 gig console, and that was the bigger one, and that was a lot, right? And now we're at 360 gigs, and all of a sudden we're looking at that and we're kind of worried about how many games we can keep on our system. Of course, file sizes change. Games have become much larger. We're looking at higher. We're looking at a world with higher textures, like texture quality. The thing with the Xbox Series S, at the very least, it's not going to be playing in 4K. So Xbox, I remember Microsoft saying that like the file sizes for games on the Series S should be smaller. I think it caps out at 1440p. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it's 1440p. So maybe there isn't as much concern there. But even the last generation, my PS4, like I think my PS4 Pro was a 2 terabyte, and like truthfully, I couldn't keep as many games on there as I would have liked to have done. Like I had to shuffle games around more often than I would have liked. So seeing 364 in the Series S is cause for a little bit of concern. But if you're purchasing a Series S, I would level a guess that that's probably not your main game console. Right. It seems like a more supplementary game console. And if it is your main console, you're going to be going with the Series X anyway, PS5 or a PC. But the reason the Series S appealed to me at the jump was because it was a cheaper way to get in the Xbox ecosystem, at least console ecosystem. So we'll see. The other thing is games are probably going to get larger over the course of a generation. So when these games are getting larger at the end of the generation, like, we already know that the storage capacity on the Xboxes, or at least increasing the storage capacity in the Xbox ecosystem, it's going to be proprietary. Like you're going to have to purchase a proprietary SSD card that Microsoft sells. I'm sure there'll be a Mad Catz version someday, but still, it's not cheap. I have where is it? So here's the skinny. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let me get through all three of these first, then we'll talk about like options here. The PS5 is going to have 667-ish gigs, which is pretty low when you consider. I think it was like 825 is what it's supposed to be packaged with. So we're looking at like over 100 gigs being taken up by the OS and other systems. And the Xbox Series X is 802 gigs, which is a little bit healthier. I think you're going to have some breathing room there. But still, again, if you go Xbox, you're going to have to purchase something proprietary. With Sony, you can insert an SSD. Let me read this quote I have here. I think it's from Tech Radar. It says, however, there's a catch. You currently cannot use these external drives to store any PS5 games, even on a suitably speedy external SSD. You can only move PS4 titles onto external drives on the PS5 right now, meaning you'll need to keep any PS5 games you want to install strictly on the 667.2 gigabytes of internal storage. So not only can you not expand right away. Here, let me read this other quote. Sony's approach allows for more flexibility in how you expand your PS5 storage, but is constrained by a list that the company approves beforehand. So it's not quite proprietary, but still, like, the list is pretty small. That's to ensure that the SSD you purchase matches the minimum 5.5 gigs per second bandwidth only afforded by brand new PCIe 4.0 SSDs. Fancy word for just faster SSDs that companies like Samsung and Western Digital have started producing. So, do you see how this gets a little bit muddy? You can expand on Xbox, but you can only use proprietary. You can expand on Sony on PS5, but you can only use certain SSDs, but it does let you do third party. And when you go PS5, I was reading on The Verge that you're not going to be able to put that SSD in at launch. You will, it just won't be able to be supported until a later firmware update. Pretty messy. Needless to say, pretty muddy waters we're living in right now. And the proprietary storage for Xbox is going to cost $220, $219.99, oversold it, to start. $220. That's wild. And I'm pretty sure it's only a terabyte. I'll have to fact check myself there and report next week, but I think it's only a terabyte external and it's $220. So the positive about the Xbox ecosystem is you can store like any of your games on an external drive and pass back and forth, which will save you. I know there are some of you out there with like data caps. Thankfully, I don't have one. I know Haley has one, and if I hit that cap over at her house, or I'm trying to download a game on my PlayStation, man, I might as well take the PlayStation home and download it on my internet. So those of you with data caps, if that's a like pretty heavy consideration you take, considering that games are always plugged in online, that we have updates, that really anything out of the box is I remember playing Persona 5 on PS4, and I put the disc in and started playing the game basically right away, and I was like, wait, what? There's no update, there's no install, like I'm actually playing something off of disc? That's an anomaly now. So if you're I think you might have to take some considerations as this console generation shakes out for the purchase you're going to make, depending on your data caps and depending how big these games are. Maybe we find a better way to compress these game titles moving forward. I don't have a lot of hope that some of these game companies will care. I mean, you look at Call of Duty, and I know they shrunk it a little bit, but we're at the point on PC where it doesn't even fit on a 250 gig drive. Now, 250 gig drive is most of your Series S storage capacity, almost half, probably about 30% of your PS5 storage capacity, and over a fourth, almost a third of your Xbox Series X capacity. And Cold War's coming out, and they're going to add another map there. So your real estate for this memory is shrinking. Anyway, what I like to do, I don't like to overreact yet. So the PS5, I'll obviously be getting it on the 12th. And I'm looking to install a few games there. I'll report back like how much. I'm kind of interested to see how much space like Spider-Man Remastered plus Miles Morales plus Bugsnax plus Valhalla, like how much do I actually have to play with after I download those games? Astro's Playroom. So we'll report back next week and see, like, maybe storage is a non-issue. I certainly hope it is, but it seems like with all the messaging that it's going to be an inevitability at some point this generation. So definitely weigh your options when you're making that purchase. Watched a quick look on, speaking of Valhalla, on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It looks pretty good. Honestly, like I've kind of stayed away from most of the media around Valhalla. I looked at some of the initial launch videos, and I watched about 20 minutes of a quick look on Giant Bomb, which is one of my favorite outlets, not to deter you from hanging out here, but one of my favorite outlets to watch videos with, because they have a similar measured approach to how they review games. But the combat seems slightly less spammy There's a stamina bar. There were times in Odyssey where I'd just be fighting someone and spamming a button for or a boss for seemingly 5 minutes at a time. It seems like you have to be a little more thoughtful about your combat in Valhalla. I could be proven wrong. As you level up your stamina, of course, maybe it becomes again a non-issue. But I think adding, I don't know, there's a sweet spot for me in combat that's somewhere in between the Dark Souls universe and a straight up Devil May Cry hack and slash, or the God of Wars of old. The newest God of War maybe accomplished it best for me. It's a combination of skill and spam. It's skill with room for error and spam in very small bursts. I don't know. Yeah, no, that's the way I describe it. So I'm hopeful that Assassin's Creed Valhalla can sort of toe that line for me. I think either way, I'm probably going to enjoy it. It still looks like an Assassin's Creed game, but I'm here for it. So that comes out on the 10th actually. So I think it's lining up with the Xbox launch. So you'll be able to play that on both current generation or previous generation. I don't know. I don't know what. I guess we'll call it previous generation come the 10th, and also on current gen. And I think if you go on Amazon and Target right now, you can get Valhalla for $49.99 for the PS4, and you might be able to for Xbox as well. And obviously there's the free upgrade on next gen. I believe it's free. I know on Amazon specifically they have some of that packaged. I'm not sure if it's going to be like that for everyone later on. There's a lot of muddiness also around the nature of backwards compatibility and what actually comes over versus what you have to pay for, and I think that's being decided on a developer basis. You look at the whole Control controversy, where Control, only if you had the Ultimate Edition on the previous consoles you could play on the new consoles. If you have the standard edition on the previous consoles, you cannot play on you cannot free upgrade and you have to rebuy the game. And then you look at Spider-Man, where the only way to play the remastered Spider-Man is to buy the $80 packaged version with Miles Morales. These publishers and these developers know what they're doing though, so they're going to get theirs no matter what, but make sure you look out for yourself as a consumer as well. Also in the news, Square Enix reports a huge loss on the Marvel Avengers game. 6.5 billion yen. So that comes out to about $62 million. And this is kind of a game that came and went for me. When I first saw it was announced, I watched the initial launch and I was so underwhelmed by what I saw that I was just kind of all right, well, I'm just going to file that into the category of games where I'm not going to purchase it, but if it comes out and people are really enjoying it, maybe I pick it up. And honestly, it came and went, and I've heard some people are enjoying their time with it, but largely that it's another one of those games, games as a service games. And it seems for me right now, it's a do not buy. So I think I maybe have a little more research to do, watch some people play it on Twitch. But from what I've read, you can get through the whole campaign and there hasn't been a reason to pick it back up yet. I know that there's some events coming out. But there isn't a lot of space in my life for games as a service video games anymore. And when I think about this Marvel Avengers game, it's who is this game for? It seems like this game was thought up of in a boardroom. They're hey, that Destiny game's making some pretty good money, right? Can we do that with this Marvel license? Can we? We can? All right, let's do it. Let's make a shit ton of money. And it kind of backfired. You have one of the most popular IPs, and this isn't, this is not a controversial opinion. I know it's not a hot take, but you have one of the most popular IPs in the world right now, especially with the launch, riding on the coattails of Infinity War and Endgame and the whole Marvel universe, these past 10 years or so. And you come out with this, for lack of a better term, wet fart of a game, games as a service. It seems like they were developing this game and they saw what happened to Anthem and decided to learn nothing from it, right? So I had something listed here like, will this go the way of Destiny or will it go the way of Anthem? Right now, it's seemingly going the way of Anthem. Um, it's definitely made more waves than Anthem has had. I think it's got a healthier player base, though I did see some stuff on PC that it wasn't doing very well on PC. This just screams like console game to me, I guess. Like there's some people on console that are just like deathly loyal to like a few games. I guess the same on PC when you look at like League and such, but I know that at least on console, like Destiny is still really successful. But for me, like Destiny at least has this like really like visceral and like punchy gunplay. It feels really good. The I mean it's Bungie, right? It's Halo, like the team that brought you Halo initially. The gunplay is so good it kind of carries the rest of the game. And the production values there. For Marvel Avengers, I don't know. I watched a video yesterday and just none of the combat seemed. You're superheroes and you're fighting grunts, and like if you're the Hulk and it takes more than one punch to take someone out, or they don't go flying, like there's something about that just doesn't necessarily feel right. Same with Iron Man. And there's this weird like uncanny valley because the faces and names we've all come to know, like who play the characters on the big screen, it's like they kind of have the same essence as the actors, but they also don't, and they're trying to do their own thing, but also kind of not. So I don't know. The other question I have is like, why Crystal Dynamics? Like why Eidos Montreal? You know, they have Tomb Raider. Square has Tomb Raider in their wheelhouse, and they have Deus Ex. I don't understand what like who's making the decisions at Square, and like they look at a Sony or they look at other developers and what they're doing. Actually, I know what they're looking at. I mean, they're looking at those games of a service and the long tail of video games, which I've come out like I hate it. I personally hate it, like the long tail of games. But they wanted a piece of that pie. And I really think if they took a more measured approach, like Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, even though the previous one didn't sell as well as they had hoped, I think that's still like a steadier, it's like long-term game gains and investment to like build a brand rather than like a singular like short-term gain or like quick money grab, right? That's the difference to me. Like you look at the decisions that Square's made over the past few years, like Hitman 2, I think, or Hitman did pretty well, and then they shelved IO, and IO had to like buy the IP from them, and they went off and did their own thing, and now they're on Hitman 3, and I think they're still doing pretty well. So like at some point you have someone crunching numbers and looking at the margins, and it's just not enough for them. And it's just one of those like unfortunate, like you want to think that everyone's in it for the passion of the games and the passion of the IPs and making things that are awesome. But I don't know. At the end of the day, it's cream, you know, like cash rules everything around me. And the more I live in the like kind of corporate world, I don't know, you kind of you see some decisions like come through and you're just like, damn, all right, like I understand why we did it. I wish we didn't have to do it that way. Like talking to like some of my friends in the corporate world, like sometimes it comes down to dollars and cents, and it seems like Marvel Avengers was one of those dollar and cents decisions that did not pay off. So we'll see what happens with Square next. I mean, they're gonna have the new Final Fantasy game coming out in a few years. They're probably like 62 million isn't a drop in the bucket for them. It's definitely a big loss. They can still get some of that back if they continue running their game as a service. Maybe they like course correct like they did after the initial Destiny launch. If you recall, the initial Destiny launch did pretty well. But there was the same concern, like the end game just like wasn't there like it is for Marvel. So maybe like they need to totally think about how they're approaching end game of the Avengers. And if there's still goodwill in the community, like they can get some people back in. I'm one of those people who's willing to like take a look at a game, you know, patient gamer, like a year on. If the game's still going a year down the line, maybe there's enough content there for me to jump in at a lower price. Yeah. So anyway, that's a little bit of a bummer to end on, I guess, but we're gonna take today's show. I think the last two shows were almost like an hour and 10 minutes on the dot, both of them. As you guys know, typically the show runs from like 30 to 45 minutes. So that's most of what we've got today. Let's talk about what's up next. No emails today. Again, that's breadradiolive@gmail.com if you want to write in a topic. More than happy to read it on the podcast and answer your question. But what's next? Of course, PS5 and next gen is next, and Xbox, of course. If you have an Xbox, if you're someone that bought into the Xbox ecosystem, please send me a message. I want to know how you're enjoying it. I'm going to be tweeting a ton at It's Bread Time about my PS5 experience. Tweet at me, let me know how it's going on Xbox. I want to know how your backwards compatibility is working. I want to know how your Game Pass is going. I want to know how your next gen experience is. What's that jump like? Do you like those of you that have a really nice 4K TV? Are you utilizing ray tracing, or are you going for the performance mode for 60 FPS or 120 FPS on the Xbox Series X and Series S? I don't know. There's a lot of excitement. So I'll be playing Spider-Man Remastered, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Bug Snacks is going to be out on PlayStation Plus. Astro's Playroom is in the box for PS5, and I pre-ordered Assassin's Creed Valhalla today on PS5. So I don't know if I'll have the opportunity. We've got 2 or 3 short days before I'm going to record the cast again. Maybe I said I don't really stream as much anymore, but maybe we'll stream some Miles Morales or some Bug Snacks or something. So keep an eye on twitch.tv/breadradio. But I'm hoping to have some pretty good takes for you guys next week. If you guys want to get involved in game night, let me know. Again, breadradiolive@gmail.com. Listen wherever you do to podcast. Merch at breadradio.live. If you want to support the show monetarily, not necessary, but I really do appreciate it, you can go to patreon.com/breadradio. But of course, the best thing that you can do for me is tell your friends to take a listen to the show. That's going to do it for us today. As always, I've been your host, August Acker, aka Bread. This is Bread Radio. Have a great week, and as always, be cool to one another. Bye now.